Welcome pilots, my name is Hybrid V and today we are doing something a little bit different. We're not going to be watching your takeoff and landings today. Instead, you're all going to watch me do a few takeoff and landings. Yes, a lot of you in the comments have been asking, hey Hybrid, how can I improve my own takeoff and landings? I seem to be pretty bad at it, or I am okay, I can pull it off normally, but I can't do that cinematic style landing. It's just a little too tricky, a little too difficult. Do you have any tips you can offer? So that's what we're going to do in today's videos. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to move on and do a couple demonstrations of my own takeoff and landings to give you guys an idea what the cinematic landings I look for in a lot of my videos look like, and give you guys some tips to improve your own landings, both in a technique perspective and also improving the aesthetics of it as well. So let's go ahead and kick things off, shall we? Alright, so we're here in my Titan, and this is a good little training ship to kind of show off the techniques here. So one of the first things that we're going to make sure we're going to do here is we're going to need to make sure that we have full control of our ship as we take off and land. We don't ever want to exit the hangar when we don't have control of the ship. And the easiest way to ensure that we have control is by using our limiter. Our speed limiter is crucial for this. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce my speed limiter down here. Not too far, I just want to be enough so I can have some control. And then we're going to go ahead and open the hangar doors here. And the speed limiter for both your takeoff and landings is absolutely crucial for this. I can't stress this enough. So I'm going to go ahead and show you in this little third-person perspective what we're looking for here. So the first thing for the takeoff and landing series that I look for that's very cinematic is we want to make sure that we're doing everything in a controlled fashion. So I'm going to go ahead and lift off. Again, I have my limiter low, so I have a lot of control here. Then I'm going to pull my gear up. Once my gear is up and the doors are sufficiently open, I simply push out forward and I go about my business. I can then unlock my limiter and go on my way if I so choose to. It's very simple, very straightforward. There's really not much going on there. Now, you may have some issues if you're using mouse and keyboard with some oscillations of your mouse and whatnot, or if you're still trying to work with whatever control scheme you have. Remember, the main thing we're looking for here is you want to raise up in the air, you want to keep it controlled and level, pull your gear up, and then push your way out nice and smooth. All right, let's go ahead now and let's make our way back to the hangar and let's do a landing. All right, the hangar is now called up, so let's go ahead and make our way in and show off how we can do our landing here. So we need to identify our landing spot, which we've already done. It's already marked on our HUD. So we're gonna go ahead and approach. And we're gonna make sure that we are sufficiently lined up here. I'm gonna do this in third person so you can kind of see what this looks like here. We're going to do this again in first person a few times as well in certain locations, because I also want to show you how this looks from a first person perspective, which is my most recommended way of doing it. All right, so now I'm going to come in nice and smooth. Now I have my limiter down. Again, limiter is super key here. Once I've cleared the doors, now I'm going to go ahead and start descending, and then I'm going to pull my gear down, make sure I'm nice and lined up, and then touch down nice and smooth. It's as simple as that, but of course, it takes a lot more practice to get it done right. This is not something that you could just immediately pull off, especially if you're a little bit more of a newbie at this. It takes a lot of practice. All right, let's kick things up a notch. We're going to go ahead and do this all in first person here at our Corp Area 18, because I want to show you what it's like coming into the side-on hangars here in atmosphere, entirely in first person, so I can walk you through the process of doing this in first person, because I recommend you do it almost always all your landings in first person. Very rarely will I recommend you do your landings in third person, and that is because third person can cause some depth perception issues, which will in turn mean you'll end up bumping stuff on your way in. Alright, so we already went ahead and called our hangar, and I've already identified now where I need to come in and land, so I'm going to go ahead now and properly line myself up with the hangar, which is a side-on hangar, which is exactly what we're looking for here. I'm going to go ahead and rotate and start descending and making my approach. Now you'll notice I don't have my gear out yet, right? Because again, we want to try to pull this off and make it cinematic here. Bringing my limiter down here as we come in. I'm also giving just ever so slightly some downward strafe here as I come in. All right, now we are lined up and we're good to go here. I'm going to keep bringing my limiter down, slowing down. And as soon as I feel comfortable and over the pad, I'm going to start descending, gear down, and then softly touching down on the pad. It's as simple as that, but of course, this takes a lot of practice. Like I said, even I sometimes mess these things up. It's not something that everybody can pull off, but if you can, it looks awesome, and of course, you'll be able to impress your friends, and you never know who's watching. You may impress them as well. So let's go ahead and move on to ships with VTOL now, because there's a little bit more going on under the hood there. All right, we're in my Argo raft, and we're going to go ahead and get started here. Now, one of the main things that we're going to have to remember when using VTOL craft is, well, our VTOLs. Now, when you first power on the ship, the VTOLs are actually going to be flattened out for forward flight. So we're actually going to need to correct for that. So you're going to have to remember to actually enable your VTOLs before you actually start the process here. Otherwise, you're going to potentially have issues. Let's go ahead and bring the limiter down and start opening the doors. Now, I say potentially have issues because it's only a very few select ships that really require VTOLs, like for example, the Mole. But you have to remember that VTOLs are actually functional in the game. They will give you additional lift, which means more control, which means a better takeoff and landing. All right, let's go ahead and start lifting off here. Remember, my limiter's down, so I have full control. Once I'm in a nice hover, I'm going to go ahead and gear up. Once the gear is fully up and doors are open, I'm going to push out. And when I'm ready to start picking up more speed, that's when I'm going to actually turn off VTOLs here. So right here is a good spot. Let's go ahead and start pushing forward. VTOLs off, and away we go. Now we're going to pick up more speed. Depending on the size of your ship, you may still need to keep the VTOLs on here. For example, like the Hull C, a very heavy ship will require VTOLs at least on for the most part of your journey, just because of the way it is designed. It can be a little bit squirrely. All right, let's go ahead and bring it on back, because we're going to go ahead and land this puppy in first person. All right, hangar is called, and I'm already perfectly lined up. Let's go ahead and make our way forward. I'm going to go ahead and reduce the limiter. It is a heavier ship, so I want to reduce the limiter a little bit early. But also, because I have VTOLs on this ship, I have a lot more control. So as I descend here, I'm going to flatten out my trajectory, and I'm going to enable the VTOLs, and you can see they are now firing, which gives me a lot more control over my descent pattern here. So now I'm going to go ahead and start continuing my descent. I'm just strafing down as I'm moving slightly forward here, keeping my limiter low, because the limiter is giving me all this control along with my VTOLs. And then as I push forward, I'm probably going to go in first person here really quick just to check I'm aligned. There we go. Just a small adjustment of my alignment there. Perfect. And now we can just go ahead and push in as we make our way in, just nice and smooth. Again, the limiter's doing most of the work here, folks. And then once I'm over the pad and I am satisfied, let's go a little bit forward. I'm going to start descending here. Then I can start bringing the gear down and start doing my final alignments here. And here we are, touchdown. Simple as that. With a little bit of practice and know-how, you can do this as well too. Again, the entire amount of heavy lifting done here is your limiter, and just maintaining that control as you come in. As long as you practice these things every time you come in and out, you're going to nail it every single time, guys. All right, now for Star Citizen's biggest boss in the entire game, and that is vertical hangars. All right, I'm in my Pisces here, and we're at Lorville because we're going to try to do some landings in the vertical hangars. And the first technique I'm going to show you guys is the nose-in approach, which is the most common approach and is probably recommended for most people because it's the simplest. So I have my hangar identified, and I'm going to go ahead and start making my descent here once I'm satisfied and lined up with my approach here. I'm going to go ahead and start making my descent profile. And then I'm going to go ahead and start lining things up here. I'm pretty good. And I'm going to pay attention to the TVI. You see those two carrots facing each other? They're very important for this. The TVI is very, very important. It shows you where your ship is going at any time. So we're going to go ahead and nose in. I'm going to keep my limiter low here. Once I pass the air shield, I'm going to go ahead and rotate to line up with my horizon, descend, gear down,
Landing gear deployed.
touchdown. Simple as that. Though, of course, this technique can be a little bit tricky and a little bit hard to understand if you don't remember the actual lining up process when you come in through that air shield, that blue shield you see as you're coming in through the top there. Might as well give myself some feel here. But yeah, so once you're through that air shield, you level out. You can use this artificial horizon you see here in the center of the screen here, and that will help you line up, and then you descend slowly and you bring the gear down. A few more steps here and there, but it's not too hard. All right, let's go ahead and take off. I'll just show you a vertical takeoff through the hangar. It's very simple. Instead of pulling up to a hover and then taking off, we're just going to go ahead and keep our limiter low. We're going to go ahead and ascend. And then as we're ascending here, we'll then just pull the gear up. Simple as that. And then away we go. All one smooth motion, no hesitation whatsoever. And we're just going to push our way out. Very simple and very straightforward. Okay, we're going to use my saber here again to do the nose-in first-person approach. I just want to do it one more time again because, like I said, vertical hangars can be tricky, and I want to make sure that I run through it a few times just so you guys understand exactly how to pull this off as simple and safely as possible. So, I have my hangar identified. Now, time to line myself up here. Looking good. Let's go ahead and start making our descent, and then once I'm satisfied with my alignment and descent, I'm going to start bringing my limiter down here because, again, everything is down to the limiter. I'm going to keep my TVI in where I want it. Slightly, I'm pointing kind of slightly above the pad here. I'm just going to kind of keep it nice and level, get that limiter down. Once I pass this air shield here, I'm going to go ahead and flatten out. Once I'm satisfied, gear down, keep the downward strafe going, and we are touched down. Now you want to make sure, again, like I said, the limiter is key. Everything here is about the limiter. You're going to constantly be modulating that limiter to make sure that you have the maximum amount of control. You don't want to keep the limiter too low, otherwise you'll have trouble actually moving and you'll end up stopping in the air. You just want to keep it just enough where you feel like you have control and the ship's not going to get away from you. All right. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is another takeoff out of this hangar, but we're going to do the bolter style of takeoff. You've heard me kind of mention this a few times in the takeoff and landing videos here and there, and it's very simple and straightforward. Instead of taking off in a nice smooth motion and leaving the hangar, we're instead going to hover. So we're just above the pad, then we're going to rotate to look outside the hangar. We're then going to gear up, and we're going to raise or at least unlock our limiter so we have the maximum amount of speed available to us, and then we're going to boost our way out of the hangar like so. Really handy for light fighters if you just want to go ahead and start gaining altitude as fast as you possibly can. Some ships may struggle with this, mostly the bigger ships, but for the most part, every ship can kind of do it. You just have to be careful about how long your ship is because you could potentially hit the back end of your ship as you're doing that, so you have to be very careful. All right, vertical takeoff with a larger ship that also has VTOLs attached to it. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to open the hangars here. Same approach as always. We're going to go ahead and keep our limiter in check here. We're going to go ahead and also make sure our VTOLs are enabled because, like I said, when you power the ship on, the VTOLs are going to be in flight mode, not lifting mode. All right, now our limiter is nice and low. Let's go ahead and check our hangar doors. We are good here. Once we're satisfied, we're going to go ahead and lift off. Nice controlled lift off. Now, the wingspan can be a little bit large on the Retaliator, but it still fits in even when it is geared up, as you'll see here. So I'm going to go ahead and just lift up anyway before I exit the air shield. And then whenever I am ready and I'm satisfied to move forward, I'm going to go ahead and apply forward thrust and turn VTOLs off. And we're pretty much out and ready to go. And there we go. Off we go. Simple and straightforward as that. All right, we're going to go ahead and land this thing in a vertical hangar. I'm going to do this in third person because I'm going to show you the horizontal landing method. The vertical landing method, or I should say the nose-in landing method, is a little bit trickier to pull off on a ship like this because of its length. Most of the big ships can be really tricky to pull off with a nose-in approach, so you will have to do a horizontal approach to landing, which is one of the more difficult ways to land in Star Citizen by far. Vertical hangars in a horizontal pattern is some of the most difficult ways to land currently in the game. Now, once again, I'm going to go ahead and line things up and get my approach, and as soon as I'm ready to start beginning my final descent here into the actual hangars, I'm going to flip my VTOLs on like so I have control over my ascent and descent profile here. Then I'm going to line things up. Like I said, I'm doing it in third person because I want you guys to see it. I do not recommend you do your landings in third person. Try to do them in first as much as you can because you have a little bit more visual control and awareness. You can see a lot more in third person, but you're going to have depth perception issues causing you to hit stuff. All right, aligned and descending. As soon as I cross the air shield, I'm going to go ahead and bring my gear down once I'm satisfied with the altitude that I'm at, and then controlled. Remember, everything is all dictated by the limiter here. So the reason why I'm able to come in nice and slow. Now, like I said, I'm doing this in third person just to show you what it looks like. I don't recommend you do it in third person yourself because, again, the third person camera can cause some depth perception issues. So you'll end up thinking that you're lined up and you'll end up bumping parts of the ship anyway. In first person, you can kind of line things up a little bit better by simply identifying where you are within the world. So the Retaliator's pilot seat is way in the front. So if I'm going to do this approach in first person, I know that my ship needs to be pretty close to the edge of the hangar as I come in this horizontal approach. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that now. I'm going to go ahead and open the hangars here. We're going to do, I'll just go ahead and show off this vertical takeoff. We already did it once, but I'll do it again anyway, just so you guys can see it. So I'm going to go ahead and lift off. Let's let this hangar door open. And we're going to slowly pull up. I'm going to pull my gear up now anyway. Like I said, I have more than enough clearance for these wings. And here we are, lifting up straight. And then when I'm ready to push forward, VTOL's off. And away we go. All right, so let's go ahead and bring her around because we're going to do a horizontal landing. Okay, let's call a hangar up.
Please proceed to assigned landing bay.
There we go. Hangar is assigned. We're going to go ahead and line ourselves up once again. Same process as before. Now, like I said, this is the most hardest landing to pull off. And even in first person, I can't guarantee you're going to nail this each and every time. Even I sometimes mess this up. That is just the nature of how hard horizontal landings in Star Citizen are. Without any type of formal landing assistance aid within the game currently, it's coming eventually, but we've been waiting for years for our landing assistance to come back in, our radars and landing cameras to be a thing. They've disappeared since 2.5 and whatnot, but I digress. Without any of that, we're going to have to rely on some really, really hard Mark 1 eyeball techniques here. So we're going to go ahead and come in, use our limiter to slow ourselves down, and when we need more control of our ascent and descent profile, we're going to enable that VTOL, and that will give us a little bit more control of how we approach. Now I'm going to push my TVI, my true vector indicator here, the two carrots pointing at each other, offset here slightly towards the edge of the hangar, and I'm also going to point my nose there. And the reason why is, like I said, this ship is long, so I want to make sure that my part of the ship, the cockpit, is relatively close to that side of the hangar. I'm going to go ahead and pull my gear a little bit early here, and then we're going to go ahead and descend and slow her down right before we touch down, and there we are. And that's how you do a horizontal approach, and you can do this for smaller ships as well. Again, remember where you are within the world. A lot of people will end up thinking they need to be in the center of the hangar as they land, because they think that the ship is like where their cockpit is the center of the ship. But you have to remember, where are you in relation to the hangar and where you are in relation to your ship. In this case, I'm in a retaliator, so I'm all the way far in the front and I have a lot of ship behind me, so I need to treat it as such. So I need to get a little bit closer to the edge of the hangar as I descend like that to make sure that the rest of my ship behind me can also fit in. And that covers today's video, talking about how we can improve our takeoff and landings to make them a little bit more aesthetically pleasing and a little bit more cinematic. Hopefully you found it pretty informative. It takes a lot of practice and it's something to work towards. It's a little bit of a self-challenge, right? We can land any way we want. We can put our gear down as far away as we want, right? We can land as fast as we want, and at the end of the day, as long as we don't blow up, it doesn't really matter. But the added challenge of trying to make your takeoff and landings a little bit cinematic is actually pretty rewarding in itself. Remember, Star Citizen's flight model does require some skill, so it takes practice getting used to this. And of course, when master modes and control surfaces come in eventually, that's also going to be an additional added bit of difficulty and challenge to the overall takeoff and landings. All right, folks, I hope you did find this video informative and enjoyable. And if you did, please leave a like, as it really does help at the channel. And of course, if you want to see more videos like this and much more down the line, subscribe. Until next time, fly safe, as you never know who might be watching. And I'll see you all in the black.